Tuesday night in Chicago began like any other, but no one was prepared for what would happen in the next few minutes. Marcus Sullivan, at 35 years old, was the most feared man in the city. He was not just a mafia boss. He was the absolute king of Chicago, the one who controlled every street, every business, every breath taken in the city. His reputation was built on blood, betrayal, and a coldness that made even the toughest men tremble. That night, he was in his office at the top of a luxury building in downtown Chicago, surrounded by his most loyal men, when he received the news that would change everything. An ambush was happening at that exact moment in one of his warehouses at the port, and it was not just any ambush. It was a perfect trap, planned by someone who knew his every move, every strategy, every secret. Marcus ran down to the port, his men at his side, and what he found was a scene of pure chaos and destruction. Bodies scattered across the floor, blood in every corner, and in the middle of it all, the betrayal that would wound him more deeply than any bullet ever could. His own brother, Danny Sullivan, was there, negotiating with Vincent Rossi, his greatest rival, the man who for 10 years had tried to defeat Marcus and take control of Chicago. The scene froze in time when Marcus saw the truth in his brother's eyes. Danny had sold information, had planned everything, had betrayed the family for money and power. Marcus felt something break inside him at that moment. It was not just anger. It was a pain that transcended human understanding. He drew his gun, and within seconds, gunshots echoed through the port. Danny fell first, his own blood staining the concrete floor. Vincent Rossi managed to escape, but not before leaving a clear message. The war had begun, and this time, it would be until the end. Hello, my name is Rose Cameron, and you are about to hear one of the most intense, emotional, and transformative stories I have ever narrated here on the channel. This is the story of a man who had everything: power, wealth, respect, but who discovered that none of it mattered when his heart finally woke up. If you love stories of drama, action, betrayal, and epic romance, you need to stay until the end of this video. Before we continue, I ask that you subscribe to the channel, like this video, and share it with your friends. Your support is what keeps me creating content like this for you. Now, let's go back to the story of Marcus Sullivan, because things are about to get much more intense. In the days following the ambush, Chicago became a war zone. Marcus did not sleep, did not eat, only planned his revenge against Vincent Rossi. He knew his rival had resources, had men, had power, but Marcus had something Vincent would never have: the determination of a man who had lost everything. His own brother, the one who grew up at his side, the one who should have been his right hand, had betrayed him. The pain of this betrayal was so deep that Marcus channeled everything into pure fury. He began to track every move Vincent made, every business, every contact. He discovered that Vincent was expanding his operations, bringing new men to the city, preparing for total war. Marcus knew he had to act fast, had to crush Vincent before he became too strong. One night, while Marcus was in his office, analyzing maps and attack plans, his trusted security guard, Tommy, entered with a strange expression on his face. Tommy was one of the few men Marcus still trusted, someone who had proven his loyalty countless times. Tommy said he had information about a meeting Vincent was planning, an important meeting where he would be vulnerable. Marcus felt adrenaline rush through his veins. This was the opportunity he had been waiting for, the chance to end it all at once. He gathered his best men, those who had proven their loyalty, and began to plan the most important attack of his life. The plan was simple but lethal. They would ambush Vincent at an Italian restaurant in the Little Italy neighborhood, a place where Vincent frequently met with his associates. The night of the attack arrived, and Marcus was ready. He had waited for this moment for weeks, had dreamed of it, had visualized every detail. His men were positioned at every entrance, every exit, every possible angle. Marcus was in a car parked across the street, watching the restaurant entrance through tinted glass. His heart was racing, his hand was on his gun, and his mind was focused on one thing: revenge. Then Vincent arrived. He got out of a luxurious black car, surrounded by his men, walking with the confidence of someone who believed he was safe. Marcus took a deep breath, raised his gun, and was about to give the signal for the attack when something unexpected happened. A woman walked out of the restaurant at that exact moment, walking directly toward Vincent, and Marcus froze. She was not just any woman. She was the most beautiful woman he had ever seen in his entire life, with long brown hair, green eyes that sparkled under the light of Chicago's streets, and a smile that seemed to illuminate the dark night. Marcus lowered his gun slowly, his eyes fixed on her, unable to look away. His heart, which had been racing with rage moments before, now beat for a completely different reason. The woman hugged Vincent, and Marcus felt something he had never felt before: jealousy, desire, confusion. Who was she? Why was Vincent hugging her that way? And why couldn't Marcus stop looking at her? Marcus aborted the attack at that moment. He could not explain why, but he knew he could not do anything that would put that woman in danger. He ordered his men to retreat, and they obeyed, though with clear confusion on their faces. Marcus had never aborted an attack, had never passed up an opportunity, but that night, something inside him had changed. He spent the following hours investigating who that woman was. His contacts in the police, his informants, his spies, all were activated to discover her identity. What he discovered shocked him completely. Her name was Isabella Rossi, and she was the daughter of Vincent Rossi, his greatest enemy. She was 28 years old, was educated in the arts from Northwestern University, and worked as an art curator at a museum in Chicago. She was everything Marcus was not: cultured, refined, kind, and completely innocent of the violent world her father lived in. Marcus knew he was in danger. He knew that if he allowed his feelings for Isabella to grow, he would be vulnerable. His enemies could use her against him, could hurt her to hurt him, but he could not stop thinking about her. He began to follow her, not in a threatening way, but just to see her, to be near her. He saw her going to the museum every morning, having lunch in small cafes, spending time in art galleries. She had a simple and beautiful life, completely separate from the dark world of her father. Marcus began to frequent the museum where she worked, always keeping his distance, always watching from afar. He learned about art, just to be able to talk to her, to be near her without seeming suspicious. One afternoon, while Marcus was observing a particular painting, Isabella approached him. She asked if he liked that specific work, a painting of a lonely man in a big city. Marcus answered honestly, saying yes, that the painting touched him deeply because he saw himself in it. Isabella smiled, and at that moment, Marcus knew he was lost. She began to talk to him about art, about life, about dreams and hopes. Marcus lied about who he was, saying he was a successful businessman who had a passion for art. Isabella believed him, and they spent hours talking. When she finally had to return to work, Marcus felt a physical pain watching her leave. In the following days, Marcus returned to the museum repeatedly, and Isabella was always there, always happy to see him. They began to know each other better, and Marcus found himself falling deeper and deeper for her. But then, one night, while Marcus was in his office, Tommy entered with a serious expression. Tommy said he had discovered something important, something Marcus needed to know. Vincent Rossi had discovered that Marcus was frequenting the museum, had discovered that Marcus was seeing his daughter, and Vincent had a plan. He was going to use Isabella as bait to lure Marcus into a final trap, an ambush that would be the end of Marcus Sullivan. Marcus felt the ground disappear beneath his feet. He had fallen exactly into the trap he most feared. Marcus faced an impossible dilemma. He could warn Isabella about his father's plan, but that would put her in even greater danger. He could disappear from her life, but the idea of never seeing her again was unbearable. Or he could do what he had always done: fight, plan, and win. But this time, there was something different. This time, he was not fighting just for power or revenge. He was fighting for love. Marcus began to plan a counterattack that would be as brilliant as it was dangerous. He needed Vincent to believe he had Marcus exactly where he wanted him, while Marcus actually had Vincent exactly where he wanted him. Marcus continued to visit Isabella at the museum, continued to pretend to be just a businessman interested in art. He took her to dinner at elegant restaurants, for walks by Lake Michigan, for nights at jazz shows. With each moment he spent with her, Marcus felt the hardness of his heart dissolve. Isabella made him laugh, something he had not done in years. She made him think of a different future, a future where he was not a mafia boss, but just an ordinary man who could love an ordinary woman. But Marcus knew that future was just a dream. The reality was that Vincent was watching his every move, planning every detail of his trap. One night, Isabella invited Marcus to dinner at her home. Marcus knew it was the trap, knew that Vincent would be there waiting, but he went anyway. He went because he needed to be near her, because he needed to see her one last time before everything fell apart. When Marcus arrived at Isabella's apartment, she welcomed him with a radiant smile. completely unaware of the danger surrounding her. They had dinner together, talked, laughed, and for a few hours, Marcus managed to forget who he was and just be a man in love. Then, when Isabella went to the kitchen to get dessert, Vincent appeared, surrounded by his men, blocking the only exit. Vincent had a cruel smile on his face. He said he had been waiting for this moment, that he had planned everything perfectly. He said Marcus had made the mistake of falling in love with his daughter, and now he would pay with his life. Vincent raised his gun, pointing directly at Marcus. Marcus knew he had only seconds to act. He had a gun hidden in his jacket, had men positioned outside the apartment, had an escape plan. But there was a problem. Isabella was in the kitchen, and any action Marcus took would put her life at risk. At that moment, Isabella came out of the kitchen and saw the scene before her. She saw her father pointing a gun at Marcus, saw the armed men, saw imminent death, and at that moment, something inside her awakened. She ran to Marcus, placing herself between him and her father's gun. She screamed at her father to stop, said she loved him, that she would not allow him to hurt Marcus. Vincent was shocked, his gun trembling in his hands. He had never seen his daughter like this, had never seen such passion and determination in her eyes. And at that moment, Marcus knew he had to make a choice that would change his life forever. Marcus drew his gun and fired, but not at Vincent. He fired at the ceiling, creating chaos and confusion. His men, who were positioned outside the apartment, entered within seconds, disarming Vincent's men and taking control of the situation. Vincent fell to his knees, his gun falling from his hands. Marcus could have killed Vincent at that moment, could have ended everything, but Isabella was there, watching, and Marcus could not do that in front of her. Instead, Marcus ordered his men to take Vincent away, to keep him imprisoned, but alive. He knew this was a risk, knew that Vincent was still a threat, but he could not take the life of Isabella's father in front of her. When everyone left, Marcus and Isabella were alone in the apartment. Isabella was trembling, shocked by everything she had seen. Marcus embraced her, and she cried in his arms. He whispered that everything would be okay, that he would protect her, that nothing would hurt her again. Isabella lifted her face to his, and their eyes met. At that moment they kissed, and it was as if the entire world disappeared. It was a kiss that contained all the passion, all the pain, all the hope that both had kept inside themselves. In the following days, Marcus faced a decision that tormented him. He could keep his empire, could continue to be the king of Chicago, but that would mean Isabella would have to live in constant danger, surrounded by violence and darkness. Or he could do something that no one would ever expect from him. He could abandon everything. Marcus began to transfer his power to his most trusted men. He began to liquidate his businesses, to distance himself from the mafia. His associates thought he had gone mad, that love had made him weak. But Marcus knew the truth. Love had not made him weak. It had made him strong. It had made him capable of doing the most difficult thing a man like him could do: let go. Marcus met with Isabella and told her the truth. He told her who he really was, what he had done, the crimes he had committed. He expected her to reject him, to hate him. But instead, Isabella embraced him. She said she knew who he was, that she had always known, but that she had seen something in him that no one else saw. She had seen a man who was capable of change, capable of love, capable of redemption. She said she loved him not, despite who he was, but for who he could be. Marcus and Isabella began to plan a new life together. They decided to leave Chicago, leave everything behind and start over in a place where no one knew them. But before they could leave, one last threat emerged. Vincent Rossi, who was being held prisoner by Marcus, managed to escape with the help of some of his men who were still loyal to him. He was furious, humiliated, and wanted revenge. Vincent knew Marcus was planning to leave the city, and he planned to prevent it at any cost. Vincent gathered his men and began to search for Marcus and Isabella, determined to destroy everything Marcus had built with his daughter. The news that Vincent had escaped reached Marcus through Tommy. Marcus felt anger return, but this time it was different. This time he was not angry for himself, but for Isabella. He would not allow Vincent to hurt her, would not allow his past to destroy his future. Marcus knew he had to face Vincent one last time, had to end this once and for all. He gathered his most loyal men and began to track Vincent. It did not take long to discover that Vincent was hiding in a warehouse at the port, the same place where everything had begun weeks ago. Marcus left Isabella in a safe place, protected by his best men, and went to the port alone. He knew it was dangerous, knew it could be a trap, but he had to do it. When Marcus arrived at the warehouse, he found Vincent waiting for him, surrounded by his men. Vincent had a crazy smile on his face, the expression of a man who had lost everything and had nothing left to lose. Vincent said Marcus had stolen his daughter, had destroyed his family, and now would pay with his life. He raised his gun, and his men did the same. But Marcus was not alone. His men, who had positioned themselves around the warehouse, went into action. What followed was an epic battle, a final war between two factions that had fought for control of Chicago for years. Gunshots echoed through the warehouse. Men fell. Blood stained the floor. Marcus fought with a ferocity that surprised even his own men. He was not fighting just for victory. He was fighting for the chance to have a life with Isabella. He was fighting for love. In the middle of the battle, Marcus managed to reach Vincent. The two men faced each other, and for the first time, Marcus saw fear in his rival's eyes. Vincent raised his gun, but Marcus was faster. He disarmed Vincent and knocked him to the ground. Marcus could have killed Vincent at that moment, could have ended everything with a shot, but he did not. Instead, he looked Vincent in the eyes and told him he had lost, that his time was up. Marcus left Vincent alive, but defeated, humiliated, without power. He knew this was a form of punishment much worse than death. When Marcus left the warehouse, his men surrounded him, ready to celebrate the victory. But Marcus was not thinking about victory. He was thinking about Isabella, about how she was, if she was safe. He ran to the place where he had left her, his heart racing, praying that nothing had happened to her. When he arrived there, he found Isabella waiting for him, her eyes full of tears. She ran to his arms, and Marcus embraced her with force, as if he could never let her go again. In the following days, Marcus finalized the transfer of his power. He left his empire in the hands of Tommy and his other trusted men who had proven their loyalty over the years. Marcus knew he was leaving Chicago in good hands, that the mafia would continue, but that he would no longer be part of it. He had made his choice, and that choice was Isabella. Marcus and Isabella began to prepare their departure from Chicago. They sold most of their possessions, made plans for a new life in a place where no one knew them. They chose a small town on the coast of California, a place where they could live in peace, where they could build a life together, far from violence and darkness. The night before they left, Marcus and Isabella went to one last place in Chicago, the museum where they met. They walked through the corridors, observing the paintings that had meant so much to them. Isabella stopped in front of the painting of the lonely man in the big city, the same painting Marcus had observed on the day he met her. She said that painting had a new meaning for her now. She said the man in the painting was no longer alone, that he had found someone who loved him, someone who saved him from loneliness. Marcus kissed her, and at that moment, he knew he had made the right choice. When they left the museum, Marcus received a final message from Tommy. The message said that Vincent had disappeared, that no one knew where he was. Marcus did not care. He had left Vincent alive for a reason, and that reason was that he wanted Vincent to live with the pain of his defeat, with the pain of having lost everything. Marcus knew that Vincent would never be a threat again, that he had been broken in a way that no bullet could break. Marcus and Isabella drove to California in the early morning hours, leaving Chicago behind. As they drove, Isabella slept with her head resting on Marcus's shoulder, and he drove with one hand while holding hers with the other. He looked at her, at that woman who had completely changed his life, and smiled. For the first time in his life, Marcus Sullivan was not the king of Chicago. He was just a man in love, driving toward an uncertain future, but full of hope. When they arrived in California, Marcus and Isabella rented a small house near the beach. They began a simple life, far from the spotlight, far from violence. Marcus got a job at an art gallery, working with Isabella. He learned about art every day, and Isabella taught him not just about painting and sculpture, but about how to live a meaningful life. They took walks on the beach, watched the sunset together, and slept under the stars. It was a life that Marcus had never imagined would be possible, a life that was simple, but deeply satisfying. 6 months later, Marcus received a call from Tommy. Tommy said he had important news, that he needed Marcus to come back to Chicago for a day. Marcus hesitated, but finally agreed. He left Isabella at home and flew back to Chicago. When he arrived, he discovered that Tommy had a surprise for him. Tommy had discovered that some of Vincent's men had decided to join Marcus, that they had recognized that Vincent was a weak leader and that Marcus was the true king of Chicago. They wanted Marcus to come back, to reclaim his place at the top. Marcus listened to everything Tommy had to say, and then responded with clarity. He said he would not return, that his life in Chicago was over. He said he had found something more valuable than power or wealth. He had found love and peace. Marcus told Tommy that he was now the new king of Chicago, that he had proven to be a worthy leader. Tommy protested, said it was not the same without Marcus, that the mafia needed him. But Marcus was firm in his decision. He had made his choice, and there was nothing that could make him change his mind. Marcus returned to California, to Isabella, and to the life they had built together. When he arrived home, Isabella welcomed him at the door, and he kissed her as if he had been away for years. He told her about Tommy's call, about the offer to return. Isabella asked if he had considered returning, and Marcus answered honestly that for a moment, he had. But then he had thought of her, had thought of the life they had built together, and knew that nothing in the world could be more important than that. A year later, Marcus and Isabella were married in a small ceremony on the beach, with only a few close friends present. There was no mafia, no violence, no darkness. There was only love, hope, and a bright future. Isabella wore a simple white dress, and Marcus wore a light gray suit. When the justice of the peace declared them husband and wife, Marcus kissed Isabella as the sun set on the horizon, painting the sky with colors that seemed to come from one of the paintings Isabella loved. 2 years later, Marcus and Isabella had a daughter. They named her Rose, in honor of the narrator who had told their story to the world. Rose had her mother's green eyes and her father's smile. Marcus looked at his daughter and could barely believe he had once been a man who lived only for power and violence. He had a life now that was infinitely richer than any empire he could have built. He had a wife who loved him, a daughter who admired him, and an inner peace that he had sought throughout his life without knowing it. But Marcus's life was not completely free from the past. From time to time he received news from Chicago. He received news that Tommy was doing a good job as the new king of the mafia, that the city was under control. He received news that Vincent Rossi had disappeared completely, that no one knew where he was or if he was still alive. Marcus did not care much about this news. His past was just that, past. His present and his future were in California, with Isabella and Rose. One day when Rose was 3 years old, she asked Marcus about his work. She asked why he was no longer a king, as she had heard. Marcus sat with his daughter and told her a simplified version of his story. He told her that once he had been a very different man, a man who had done bad things, but then he had met someone special, someone who loved him despite who he was, and that person had helped him become better. Marcus told Rose that love was the most powerful thing in the world, more powerful than any weapon, more powerful than any empire. Rose listened carefully, and then hugged her father, saying she was happy that he had changed. Isabella watched this scene from afar, with tears in her eyes. She knew that Marcus had made an enormous sacrifice by leaving his previous life behind. She knew that there were moments when he missed the power, the adrenaline, the life he had lived, but she also knew that he would never regret his choice. She knew that Marcus had found something much more valuable than power. He had found redemption. 5 years later, Marcus and Isabella had a second child, a boy they named Daniel, in honor of Marcus's brother who had betrayed and died. Marcus wanted to honor the memory of his brother, wanted his son to know that even those who hurt us deeply deserve to be remembered with compassion. Marcus raised his children with values that were completely opposite to the values he had lived by in Chicago. He taught them about kindness, about honesty, about the power of love and compassion. One day, when Marcus was 48 years old, he received an unexpected visit. A man knocked on his door, a man Marcus recognized immediately. It was Vincent Rossi. Vincent had aged greatly. His face was pale and thin. His eyes were empty. He had spent the last years living as a man without identity, without power, without anything. Vincent had come to ask Marcus for forgiveness, to ask that Marcus forgive him for the crimes he had committed against him. Marcus felt a wave of emotion pass through him. He could have closed the door in Vincent's face, could have rejected him completely. But instead, Marcus invited him in. Marcus and Vincent sat in the living room, and Vincent began to tell his story. He said that after his defeat in Chicago, he had tried to rebuild his empire in other cities, but had failed in each one. He said he had lost everything: his men, his money, his dignity. He said he had spent years living on the streets with nothing, with no one. He said he had finally understood what Marcus had understood, that power and wealth meant nothing if you did not have love. Vincent said he had come to California because he had heard that Marcus was living in peace here, and he wanted to know how it was possible. Marcus listened to everything Vincent had to say, and then responded with honesty. He said he had found peace because he had found someone who loved him despite who he was. He said he had learned that true power did not come from guns or money, but from human connections, from meaningful relationships, from love. Marcus offered Vincent a coffee, and they talked for hours. Marcus did not completely forgive Vincent, but offered him something that was perhaps more valuable: understanding and compassion. When Vincent was leaving the house, Marcus gave him the address of a homeless shelter in the city, a place where Vincent could start over. Marcus also gave him some money, enough for Vincent to begin a new life. Vincent cried when he received this, and Marcus saw in his eyes that something had changed in him. Vincent had finally understood that redemption was possible, that it was never too late to change. After Vincent left, Isabella embraced Marcus. She said she was proud of him, that the act of compassion he had shown Vincent was more powerful than any act of violence he could have committed. Marcus embraced his wife, and at that moment, he knew he had lived a well-lived life. He had begun as a man of violence and power, but had ended as a man of love and compassion. The years passed, and Marcus and Isabella grew old together. They saw their children grow up, saw Rose become an artist like her mother, saw Daniel become a lawyer who defended the rights of the poor and marginalized. Marcus saw his legacy not in Chicago, not in a mafia empire, but in his children, in their lives, in the good they did in the world. When Marcus was 60 years old, he received a call from Tommy. Tommy said he had cancer, that he was dying, and that he wanted to see Marcus one last time. Marcus flew to Chicago, leaving Isabella at home. When he arrived at the hospital, he found Tommy in bed, weak and pale. Tommy apologized to Marcus for being part of his life in the mafia, for involving him in so many crimes. Marcus forgave Tommy, just as he had forgiven Vincent. Marcus spent the last hours of Tommy's life at his side, holding his hand, offering comfort. When Tommy died, Marcus cried, not with the tears of a mafia boss, but with the tears of a man who had lost a friend. Marcus returned to California, to Isabella, and to the life they had built together. He knew that his death was also approaching, that he did not have much time left, but he was not afraid. He had lived a full life, a life that had meaning, a life that had been transformed by love. He had begun as the king of Chicago, but had ended as an ordinary man, and that was infinitely more valuable. On the last day of his life, Marcus was lying in his bed, with Isabella at his side. His children were in the living room, waiting. Marcus asked Isabella to come closer, and whispered in her ear that he loved her, that he would always love her, that she had been the best thing that had ever happened in his life. Isabella cried, but smiled, because she knew Marcus had found peace. Marcus closed his eyes, and with Isabella's hand in his, he left this world. At Marcus's funeral, hundreds of people came. People came who he had helped over the years, people he had saved, people he had touched with his compassion. People from his past also came, people he had known in Chicago, people who had been part of his previous life. But what mattered most was that Isabella was there, with her children, with her grandchildren, surrounded by the love that Marcus had created. Isabella looked at Marcus's coffin and whispered a final message to him. She said he had been an extraordinary man, that he had begun as a villain, but had ended as a hero. She said she would love him forever, that she would never forget him, that she would continue to live the life they had built together. She said that Rose and Daniel would continue his legacy, that they would continue spreading love and compassion in the world. After the funeral, Isabella returned to the house she had shared with Marcus for so many years. She entered his office and found a letter that Marcus had left for her. The letter said, "My dear Isabella, if you are reading this, it means I am already gone, but I want you to know that every moment I spent with you was the best moment of my life. You saved me from a darkness that I did not know existed. You showed me that redemption is possible, that change is possible, that love is possible. Thank you for loving me. Thank you for believing in me. Thank you for giving me a second chance. Continue living the life we built together. Continue loving. Continue being the extraordinary woman you are. You are my greatest pride, my greatest love, my greatest legacy. Forever yours, Marcus." Isabella cried as she read the letter, but they were tears of joy, not sadness. She knew that Marcus had found peace, that he had lived a well-lived life, that he had been redeemed, and she knew that she would continue to honor his legacy, continue to live with the love he had taught her. And so ends the story of Marcus Sullivan, the King of Chicago, who became an ordinary man for love, a story of redemption, of transformation, of how love can change even the darkest heart. A story that reminds us that it is never too late to change, that it is never too late to find redemption, that it is never too late to love. If you made it this far, thank you for watching this story with me. If you loved this narrative, if it touched your heart, I ask that you like this video, that you subscribe to the channel for more stories like this, and that you share this video with your friends and family. Your support is what keeps me creating content like this for you. Leave a comment below, telling me what your favorite part of the story was, what moment touched you the most, what lesson you took from this narrative. I read all the comments, and I love knowing what you think. Thank you for being here. Thank you for allowing me to tell stories for you. Until the next video, take care of yourself, and remember, love is the most powerful force in the universe.